Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 19 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 20 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Tartarus HQ. Donnie panted while trying to keep up with Naruto. The older teen seemed to have her completely outmatched. Considering he's been doing this kind of stuff 3 times as long as I have, it's not too surprising. Donnie inwardly admits before trying to form the news shape Naruto was showing her with her ghost powers. The two were currently in the hollow room, which was on a neutral setting at the moment. It was basically a plain field with a starry sky above them, though Donnie had to admit it was calming at this setting, allowing her to keep her cool, even though she was really frustrated. The first thing that they had covered forming it over her skin to absorb impacts, it was something she really thought Danny could use for his ghost fighting. The next thing they covered was ironically forming the energy over her body in human mode. And over an hour later she could do so, however he told her to keep practicing with it. Ghost mode seemed to be best for training as she managed it much faster, but he said that she wouldn't always have time to transform, and that mastering her powers in human form was essential. However, now he was teaching her rather unique technique. And that was how to make claws out of her spectral energy. She watched him do it, forming small blades over his nails that arched outwards like the fake claws of Catwoman. She then tried to copy it. It wasn't easy as she nearly melted her fingers the first time. He explained that she would have to learn how to form a very small shell around the energy over her fingers before that wouldn't happen. Why am I learning this anyways? Donnie suddenly questions while waving her fingers, her ghostly healing factor kicking in to fix her nails. Hey, what could she say, being half supernatural being rocked? Because sometimes you don't want to walk through walls when people know that's your thing. Keep them on their toys. If cops or resident superhero figure out where you are, or find a pattern to your thefts, you might get caught. Thus, never steal anything the same way in a row. I never do any of my heists with the same method of entry, makes me unpredictable, and no one can plan ahead of my heists. Naruto replies and Donnie frowns for a moment, before sighing and looking at her hands. Then how do I form a shell that small? She asks the older teen, hiding her frustration at not being able to get this right. Honestly, she had every right to be frustrated. Her ghostly self was an energy manipulator by typing. All her best skills and abilities were in energy manipulation and shaping, just like Danny's was diverse in abilities, and Vlad's had been in control of his energy rather than its manipulation. Thus while he didn't really have more power than them, he was better at using what he had more than they were. Alright, listen this time, Amato. Naruto states firmly before kneeling down before the girl. The blonde then held his hands apart and concentrated, a sphere of chakra appearing in his hands. First I want you to make a shell like this. Naruto states and Donnie frowns before holding her own hands apart and trying to form the circle, merely making a larger than average ectoblast instead. Ha, I didn't know I could make them bigger. Donnie mused and Naruto frowned before deciding it wasn't a total waste, since she learned a new shape to manipulate her energy, into just not the one he wanted her to. Amato, focus. Don't push so much into it. Try to limit it, and make it hollow. Naruto tells the girl with a frown, and she blinks, before reabsorbing the energy into herself. Licking her lips nervously, Donnie tried once more, spinning a ball of energy into her hands in the form of a sphere. Good, but it's still energy, it isn't solid. Naruto states while Donnie bites her lip, trying to will the small sphere into a solid shape. It's not working. Donnie grits out and then reabsorbs the energy before slumping, Naruto sighing as he pulls the shell of energy back into himself. Don't worry Donnie, no one gets it right in one go. Naruto states and Donnie gives him a strange look. How long did it take you to learn that? She asks and Naruto grins nervously, before rubbing the back of his neck. I actually made that in about a week. He admits and Donnie slumps once more. He made it great, now I feel even worse. Amato, it's not about who made the technique, how long it takes to learn or any of that. You have to remember that it's a technique you're learning, when you need to master at your own pace, no one else's. Naruto states and Donnie rolls her eyes before falling backwards and looking up into the starry sky. I really like this room. She muses and Naruto smiles before looking up to the sky as well. Yeah, I think this is my favorite room in the HQ. Naruto admits and Donnie looks at him for a moment before sighing. Where did you get the idea for this claw thing anyways? Donnie suddenly asks and Naruto smirks while crossing his arms behind his neck. I wanted to be able to always have a weapon on hand, and back then, I really didn't want any Uchiha to steal my technique, nor did I want to have to buy a weapon of some sort and have a storage seal tattooed on me. So, instead of going through that amount of hell, I decided that I'd make a claw jutsu instead. Found out a week later how hard it was, and well, I almost gave up and got that storage seal. Naruto admits with an amused grin, Donnie smiling, seeing as it probably had been utter and complete hell for him to create the technique. I once tried to learn to teleport. I ended up splitting myself in half, literally down the middle. Donnie says with a shudder. Her body being in ghost form had allowed her to reform, but she hadn't tried to use that ability again since. Wow, talk about a splitting headache. Naruto notes with an amused smirk and Donnie gives him a look. Please no puns. My dad loves them. She grumbles and Naruto rolls his eyes for a moment. You know, hating on your father won't solve anything. Naruto comments and Donnie gives him a look in response. Oh, and how do you know that? She counters and Naruto takes a thoughtful expression for a moment. Because, first time I met my dad I punched him right in the face. Naruto comments offhandedly with a shrug of his shoulders, and gets another look from Donnie. My dad kind of ruined my life, but I figured what the hell, I'm his kid, I need to get over it. Naruto offers before biting back an angry growl as Donnie frowns in thought for a moment. He not gotten over it, his dope self had. He personally was still royally pissed off, not for Kyuubi, but because he knew that his father had probably noticed the seal on his memories when he'd fixed Kyuubi's seal, and yet he left it alone bastard. That really isn't a good argument. Donnie finally says and Naruto takes a thoughtful expression before nodding his head. Then just agree with Willa, like I do fathers suck. Naruto offers casually and Donnie smiles before nodding her head. Amen. She then says with a nod of her head and Naruto chuckles for a moment. Come on Naruto, let's go make sure Poison Ivy hasn't mutated any of my plants into bioweapons of mass destruction or something. Naruto states and Donnie blushes brightly at the thought, mainly because Ivy would probably be wearing next to nothing without her shirt. Right behind you sensei. Donnie says while following after Naruto, the hollow room returning to its basic setting as they walk down a few halls, Naruto turning to a sliding door. Once the door opened, Donnie was surprised to see a beautiful garden, filled with all manner of flowers. The most prominent were roses, violets, and for some odd reason, black roses. Who grows black roses? Donnie suddenly questioned, though inwardly knew Sam would have loved those plants. I do. Naruto states flatly, keeping it to himself that Raven liked black roses and violets. Your garden is quite healthy, and the plants are all very happy. Came an off-handed comment and Naruto looked around, his eyes soon falling upon Poison Ivy, her attire now having changed to a sleeveless and shoulder-less leotard, bicep-length fingerless gloves, and a band around her left ankle. All of which were made of a combination of leaves and vines. Ivy? Naruto acknowledges and Ivy turns to look at him, and Donnie smirks. Who's the little one? She asks, Naruto easily able to tell by her dull tone that she doesn't care, while Donnie bristles at the little one comment due to her height. Donnie with an eye. But my thief name is Ray. The girl states and Ivy raises a brow, before shrugging her shoulders. Whatever. She says nonchalantly, Naruto easily able to tell that the woman was very out of touch with her humanity. So where'd you get the foliage to make the outfit? Or do I even want to know? Naruto suddenly questions and Ivy looks at him for a moment, before turning back to the many flowers he's tended. I made them from my vines. She reports and Naruto decides that was creepy enough, and then looked at her for a few moments. You know, it's kind of been bugging me, but I've got to ask, why didn't you or any of the other super criminals back in Arkham try to get me to bust you out? Naruto asks and Ivy snorts. With Joker out there, Arkham was the safest place in the city. She reports with a shudder of fear. No one was without fear of the Joker, she was the least susceptible to that emotion when concerning Joker, but knowing the lengths he was willing to go when he had a joke in mind, meant one needed to be cautious. Yeah, I should have known. Naruto muses while looking around his garden, Donnie seeming bored until she's knocked over by Harley, the said blonde, then bowling Naruto over and sitting on his back. Hey Red. I know what we should do while we're in town. Harley tells the girl excitedly and Ivy arches a brow before looking at the blonde woman with a bored expression over her pale green features. And what exactly would that be, Harley? She questions with a dull tone, before being grabbed by her bubbly blonde friend, and pulled over where Harley then grabs Donnie, all while still sitting on a very annoyed Naruto. Me, you, and our rest of dames around here are gonna to be having a girls' night out. She calls out loudly and Ivy blinks, before a slim smile crosses over her pale green features. Sounds interesting, Harley. She admits, as the thought of herself, this Blackfire, Jinx, Ray, and of course Harley and Whale would make a rather interesting team-up for a night filled with robbing Jump City blind, as well as a little experiment Ivy wanted to conduct. Yeah. And think about it, Red 3/5 of those titans are male, and one of them happens to be old bird boy. Harley then reminds, and Ivy grins as she can see how the gears are turning in her bubbly friend's head. Why Harley, I do believe you've come up with the perfect way to spend our vacation. Ivy muses aloud, seeing as she eventually did want to get back to Gotham, something about the city, no matter how old, rundown or decayed it was, just drew her there, for lack of a better term. Squealing with delight, Harley released her two captives before flipping off of Naruto, out of the door and off to get a costume. Ugh, why does Harley have to be so happy? Naruto suddenly wonders while propping his cheek into a fist, Ivy smirking down at him while getting off of him. She talked with his plants, and knew he had a girlfriend. She didn't want to ruin his life like she would others. He was nice to her babies after all, and always took good care of them as best that he could given his profession. She's always been that way. But do you mind if me and Harley borrow the women of your team for the night? Ivy asks the blonde and Naruto looks up at her, then to a blushing madly Donnie. Knock yourself out, just try not to destroy the whole city and I'm fine. He offers with a shrug and Ivy smiles strangely, before grabbing Donnie and making her way to find the rest of the girls on the team. Oi, now maybe I can get some relaxation. Naruto muttered to himself, before standing up and stretching out his limbs, and then narrowed his eyes on the plants. You guys didn't tell her about me and Card-chan, did you? He suddenly questioned while looking around at the many plants, not really expecting an answer, and of course not getting one. Titan's Tower. Robin walked into the commons room with a deep scowl across his face. I take it you didn't find anything. That girl muses from her spot at the computer, Cyborg, Beast Boy, Star, and Raven, all trying to keep busy. No? The chief hasn't gotten anything on Corner Ivy. Looks like they're laying low. Robin reports and Batgirl frowns before typing on the computer keys for a few moments, her eyes narrowed until she crosses her arms. Weird, no sign of them in any plant or joke-themed warehouses or hideouts anywhere. Batgirl notes and Robin frowns while walking over to her and looking to the screen over her shoulder. Just what we didn't need, them starting to get out of their usual habits. Robin grumbles while crossing his arms and Batgirl starts to check a few more places, easily hacking her way into numerous systems. No sign anywhere in the main city, and there's no landlines out to the buildings around Jump. Batgirl muses before taking a thoughtful expression, the rest of the Titans all suddenly behind the two defenders of Jump and listening in on their conversation. You know, it's kind of hard to think with so many people behind me. Batgirl notes with a frown, and Robin turns to look at his team, as they quickly go back to what they had been doing before. Ugh, guys. Robin mumbles to himself with a shake of his head, then turns around to look at Batgirl. Got any options, Barb? He asks the redhead while the rest of the team listen in on them. Options? I'm trying to guess what those two are up to at this point. Normally they'd hit a museum, pull a heist, or even rob a store for clothes and some jewelry, but as of now they've been dead quiet. It's never taken them more than a day to do something. That girl grumbles before reaching up to rub her temples, the rest of the team's still listening in on their leader and his oldest friend. Jill, Barb, have you checked for anything that might be up their usual alley? The spiky-haired teen asks Batgirl, said girl heaving a slight sigh before typing the computer, a confused Beast Boy looking to Robin. Dudes, what are you two talking about? Beast Boy finally asks, and Robin blinks before looking to Batgirl. Let me guess, you criminals aren't really that into their own aesthetics. She asks and Robin nods his head, Batgirl huffing. Why does it seem like you managed to get all the normal criminals while Gotham has all the freaks? She wonders while turning back to the computer, and Robin chuckles slightly, though inwardly admits that their gallery of rogues don't compare to Batman's. Well, Beast Boy. In Gotham most of our criminals are insane. So insane that they are very caught up in their own aesthetics, or in layman's terms, if anything has even a slight similarity to their chosen theme, more than likely they're going to try and steal it, or if it's a building, use it as a hideout. As of yet the Riddler is the only one I know who isn't like this, though does leave clues for us to find his hideouts. Robin explains to the green-furred jester and Beast Boy plainly gapes towards his friend. Dude, if Batman's normal rogues are all like that, how come he isn't able to track them? Beast Boy asks and Robin frowns. Because Gotham City is at least 3 times the size of Jump City, it's also surrounded by dozens of abandoned factories and warehouses that the rogues can use to hide. Finding them there is almost literally like looking for a needle in a haystack. Robin explains and the green jester makes an O with his mouth, while Batgirl frowns for a few moments, and then stretches out her arms. Robin, I've looked through everything, there's nothing special with their themes they'd want to steal here in Jump. In fact, the only thing of value any of Batman's usual rogues would want is the original manuscript for Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and we already caught the Mad Hatter a week ago. Batgirl suddenly says and Robin frowns before crossing his arms with a thoughtful expression. Meaning we'll have to wait for them to make the first move. He notes with a frown, and knowing those two it would probably lead to something really bad. Right? So in the meantime I'd enjoy having something to eat. Batgirl says before spinning her chair around and making her way over to the kitchen where Starfire is. Seconds after she is gone, Cyborg reaches and pulls Robin over by his cape, Beast Boy following Cyborg and both looking at Robin. Oh guys, what's wrong? Robin asks while looking at his 2 male friends, both boys looking to one another, before then giving him a look. Why didn't you tell us Batgirl was coming over? Cyborg demands in a hushed tone, Robin blinking before grinning nervously. Would you believe she wanted to surprise you guys? He asks and Cyborg blinks a few moments. Wah? He offered intelligently and Robin shakes his head. Yeah, Barb's always had a pretty wicked sense of humor, you should have seen her back when we both worked with Batman. Robin muses, smiling fondly at the memories while Beast Boy frowns. Dude, it's not good for you to keep people like Batgirl a secret from us. What if the tower had been a complete mess and we look like total slobs or something? Beast Boy demands and Robin grimaces slightly. Trust me, she'd be fine with that. Besides, I remember eating cookies with her when we weren't fighting crime this one time. In fact, we got along great till the tension with Batman started. Robin mused aloud and Beast Boy and Cyborg gaped towards the spiky-haired youth in shock. Wow, never would have guessed. Cyborg says and Beast Boy nods his head, before both lean in towards the boy wonder with silly grins. So dude, do you have a thing for redheads, or what? Beast Boy asks, and Robin blinks, before gaping towards his green-furred comrade. What? He demands and Cyborg smirks. Starfire, Batgirl. Cyborg started to list and Robin smacked him upside the head with a scowl over his face. How is that any of your business? He demands through gritted teeth and Beast Boy shrugs his shoulders. It's nothing to be ashamed of if you do dude, just asking. Beast Boy comments, though the edges of his lips are slightly curled. Then shut up Beast Boy, I only ever kiss Bart back when. Robin started to say, before slapping a hand over his mouth, and then sees shocked looks on both boys' faces. You actually kiss Batgirl, Cyborg demands loudly, and Robin groans before wishing he could slither away, Starfire suddenly lunging over to hear what was going on, while Batgirl snickered into one hand. Did he really? Raven suddenly asks Batgirl, and the Dark Angel of Gotham can't help it as she smirks. Yes, she states and Raven looks at her with no small amount of surprise. When? She asks and Batgirl takes a thoughtful expression. Well, it was a while back. She muses and Raven frowns. So you two used to date? She asks and Batgirl rolls her eyes. Sort of, there's a bit of an age difference as you well know, but then again when I came back to crime fighting after a 3-year-long break, he'd really grown up and... Batgirl left off while Robin was now trying to pry his way free of his overly curious teammates, Raven and Batgirl watching. Would you date him again? Raven wondered and Batgirl frowned. No, and it's because the reasons we broke up. 1. He accused Batman of manipulating me into crime fighting again. He also got really serious and uptight. And lastly he also got mad that I never told him who I really was under my mask. When Batman figured it out, he felt betrayed, even though it wasn't my fault. He accused me of only not telling him and, well, you get the point Batgirl states and Raven winces, seeing as that was eerily similar to what happened with Tara the first time she had been around. You ever had that problem with your boyfriend? Batgirl asks and Raven offers a slight tilt of her lips as response. No, me and Naruto share almost everything about each other. She responds while Robin is now pulling himself away from Starfire, who had taken hold of him, was now demanding information of the boy wonder. Almost. Batgirl asks with a raised brow, and Raven sighs. My past, and some of his, we really don't like to talk about them. Raven responds once more and Batgirl nods her head slowly, before turning back to the scene of Robin still trying to escape an overly jealous Starfire. She's going to skin you alive, you know that right? Raven asks and Batgirl looks at Raven strangely. You're not serious are you? She asks worriedly, and Raven turns a smirk towards the Dark Angel. Starfire is from an alien race of warriors that are descended from cats, and from what I've been able to guess they're very territorial. Not only that she's as strong as 12 men, can fly, is invulnerable, and can form beams of green light out of her hands and eyes. Raven responds in kind, and Batgirl looks over to Starfire before slowly inching towards Raven. I think I really need to hide from her then. Batgirl muses while half hiding behind Raven, the dark-cloaked girl shaking her head with an amused look. I'm Starfire's best friend, don't even think about trying to hide behind me. Raven states before vanishing into thin air, Batgirl gaping before looking around and then ducking to safety. Hey, Batman only beat Superman, because he had a kryptonite ring in his utility belt in a lead-lined box at all times, so she was not taking on a jealous, super-powered, alien that didn't have such a readily available weakness. Tartarus HQ. Harley Quinn stood in an altered costume. This one was a red and black patterned suit, the top half being black on her right side and red on her left. A pair of forearm-length gloves, her right one being red and left one being black, were worn over her arms with white fingers and red diamonds on her left glove, a white collar with tassels on it that ended in powder puffs, and a hood with the same colors as her top, only with bells at the ends of 2 short tails coming off her head. Around her waist is a red corset with black trimming, and buckles down the front, while the bottom half of the suit is patterned with red on her right leg, black on her left leg with black diamonds on her right thigh, and red diamonds on her left calf, a pair of short boots covering her feet, the right one being black, and the left one red, with a green bag slung over one shoulder, and a black eye mask over her face with white mesh covering her eyes and her usual paints. Looking before herself with her arms crossed and Ivy beside her, Harley looked over the Tartarus girls critically. For the most part, she didn't have a single clue what she really needed to look for in the girls. Also, she was completely clueless to their abilities, save that Jinx was supposed to be able to cause bad luck. Dwayla was probably more insane than a lot of people gave her credit for. Blackfire, who was supposedly able to fly and had martial arts training. And lastly that Ray was able to use ghost powers. However, given the fact that Harley was very insane, also very forgetful, it was also well known that the woman was half psychotic and all mad. But that didn't exactly mean she couldn't have a good idea every now and again, and looking at the girls, Harley couldn't help a grin that formed on her face. Alright ladies. Look lively, me and Red got something to tell ya. Harley suddenly says, Ivy rolling her emerald green eyes for a moment while looking dully at the assembled teens. Tonight, we're hitting the town and painting it red. That's right. We're having ourselves an all-villains girls' night out. Harley says with a wide grin, Twyla grinning as well, while Donnie and Blackfire had to hold Jinx in order to keep her from bolting from the two clown girls. And what that means is I want you broads to loot, plunder, pillage and steal. I want you to do all things you like and not give a rat's ass who tries to stop you. Harley explains while Ivy smirks and Donnie and Blackfire look to one another. Now these girls, I like. Blackfire comments with a smirk and Donnie nods her head in agreement. Oh? This is going to be such a blast. Look out, Jump City. Here we come. Twyla suddenly calls out loudly before Ivy smirks and looks around the assembled girls. Oh, and don't forget ladies, if those troublesome titans show up, just lead them to us, so we can all show them our stuff. Ivy orders and Jinx takes time from her freak out at being around two clowns to look at the woman. What are you going to do to them? Jinx stutters out and Ivy smirks before frowning as Harley slings an arm over her shoulders. 3/5 of that team happens to be of the male persuasion, right? Harley asks and the girls nod their heads. Well, let's just say Red here has a way with men. One little kiss and they can't help doing whatever she asks. Right, Red? Harley offers then asks of her partner with a grin, Ivy smirking before nodding her head. Right then. Come on girlies. Let's really show this dull as dirt town how top party. Harley offers with her arms spread out wide. The other girls, sans a freaking out Jinx and that pathetic Ivy, cheer as they follow after the clown queen of crime out of the base and into the city. Later. Jump City Mole was having a very bad day. Today, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Jinx, Blackfire, the ghost girl named Ray, and the Joker's daughter, all decided to invade, and then rob them blind. Currently, everyone was running around in terror. Several guards were either unconscious, or being used by Ivy's mind control to aid the 6 female villains in their little crime spree. Currently, however, Blackfire was yawning as she and Donnie walked out of an ice cream parlor. The ghost girl in her ghost form, with her mask down to lick a cone of mint chocolate chip. I still don't see why you're only taking one ice cream cone. Blackfire states while looking at the girl, holding a bag filled with jewelry and other such items over one shoulder. Because I'm not into jewelry. Donnie states before finishing her ice cream, and spots a store with the Deegans. However, video games are another story. She says before flying into the store, several beams of green energy going off inside, in order to scare off the patrons as she then pilfers to her heart's content. Kids. Blackfire says with a shrug, before walking over to look down at the mayhem below, the sight bringing a smile to her face. Below her, Ivy has her plants covering the main entrance, while more are literally shaking down any passers-by for any of their money jewelry. Hey, chemicals were expensive. Harley has what appears to be a toy gun, and is holding up anyone nearby, Twyla holding an old burlap sack open in order to collect his or her loot. And last but not least, Jinx, who had finally stopped freaking out, is now happily raiding every store she can for cold hard cash while destroying this, and that along the way with her powers all in all it was a very good night. The pays to have help on these heists, Red. Harley suddenly calls out with a grin and Ivy nods her head with a smirk, this being the fastest she and her comrade had ever managed to clear out a building. Ah, the ultimate medicine and psychological aid money. Jinx suddenly called out while holding a heavy bag of cash over one shoulder. Say, why didn't we bring any of the guys along and force them to carry all this stuff back to the base for us? Jinx suddenly asks while placing the sack of cash with the other bags of loot that they had managed to acquire. Ha, never really thought of that, normally we don't get this far. Harley muses and Jinx shrugs, she really doesn't care why at the moment, the large haul they've managed to get was worth enough to keep Tartarus funded for years. It doesn't matter, the bad man isn't here to stop us, so let's enjoy it while it lasts. Ivy offers while sitting on a vine, a sultry smirk on her lips, while Jinx grins and tosses a pink hex bolt at a man, causing the floor beneath him to break and trip him. You another. Harley says happily, while still pointing her gun at some random guy's head, Twyla happily tying up another sack, and tossing it with the rest of their haul for the night. Nah, maybe we should get out of here before the Titans show up. Jinx muses while Blackfire and Donnie finally join the group, Donnie placing a large bag of video games, with their already massive hoard. I'm all for that. Our first successful heist without any pointy-eared rodents coming to mess things up. It feels good. Harley muses before yelping as a bat-shaped object slams into her hand, sending her gun sliding away. Sorry to ruin your mood, Harley. That girl comments while looking down at them from above, a smirk on her lips. But I am here. She then says with a grin and Ivy frowns before looking over to an annoyed Harley. Oh great, that babe decided to follow us. Geez, what's a gal got to get away from you winged rats for a couple days. Harley wonders and then hears a hum, thus turns around and sees Cyborg with his sonic cannon aimed at her. Alright Clowny, I suggest you hold still and give up. Cyborg states and Harley gives him a look before raising a brow. Looking to her right, she sees Beast Boy is in tiger form at the moment, and right in front of the whale. Blackfire is now covered by Batgirl from above. Ivy has Raven nearby. Donnie has Starfire watching her, and Jinx has Robin with his boss stuff at the ready. Is that Will with them? Robin suddenly asks with worry, his eyes wide behind his mask. Hell, Harley was tough enough, but Will was wild and crazy. You couldn't tell what she'd do next. Not to mention she'd somehow copied all or at least most of the major weapons, gadgets, and gizmos of Batman's worst villains. Fear toxin or Smilex gas would be hell for them to deal with if she used any of it on the city. I would suggest all of you surrender. We do not wish to do you any of the harm. Starfire comments while wondering why Robin is so worried about the red-haired girl. Hearing this comment, Harley snorts, Robin sighing and shaking his head as well. But the villains from his hometown, it was never that easy, and thinking they were going to be easy to take down would make you a fool. You kidding me with this, right? Harley asks seriously, and Cyborg merely continues to aim at her with his cannon. The other heroes poised to attack as well. Boy, they sure don't make heroes like they used to. The clown girl muses before smirking as she lunges forward, flips over Cyborg, and then quickly sweeps his feet out from under him. Grabbing a sledgehammer out of her bag, the girl then slams it into the side of Cyborg's head, sending him flying away. At the same moment, Donnie turns invisible and then plows her shoulder into Starfire's gut, sending her flying away, and Blackfire flies up and grabs Batgirl, slamming her through the roof on her way up. Titans go. Robin says quickly, only for Jinx to throw a hex bolt at him, the boy wonder quickly flipping back and taking a stance. Lunging forwards afterwards, Robin swings his staff at Jinx, the pin cat quickly rolling to the side to avoid it. Landing on his feet, Robin quickly tossed a bird airing at the pin cat, and then lunged at her. As Jinx dodged the bird airing, Robin slammed his foot into Jinx's gut, sending her flying back while knocking the breath from her lungs. Jinx, you really don't want to work with those two. They're not like other villains you've met. They will kill anyone who gets in their way. Literally. Harley has absolutely no regard for human life. Ivy isn't much better. Don't trust them. They will hurt you. Robin states warningly, and Jinx merely growls, while throwing a hexbolt at the boy wonder, Robin quickly dodging, and then watching as Jinx gets back to her feet. Birdbrain, I'm a villain. I don't care what they do. Jinx reminds, though it's obviously a lie, seeing as neither the Troika nor Tartarus were ever interested in killing masses of people. Not to mention they were all wary of Harley and Ivy, especially since neither had any regard for human life or those that got in their way. I'm telling you, Jinx, you're making a big mistake by fighting with them. Robin states with obvious worry in his tone. For all of his obsessions, none could ever make him wish death on any of their usual rogues. Harley and Ivy were crazed to the point that he knew they wouldn't care about killing a few teens to get what they wanted. Merely growling is her response. Jinx flipped forward, and then grabbed Robin's staff. Landing behind him, she used that as leverage to toss him away. Flipping in midair to land on his feet, Robin prepared to attack once more, only for a few of Ivy's vines to suddenly twist around his ankle and lift him up into the air. Why don't you just hang around, Birdbrain, and leave us to our work? Jinx says cheekily, before turning to find Raven forming some black energy around a few objects, and throwing them at Ivy. The woman merely arches a brow before her vines quickly lift her out of the way. Come now, tell me that's not all you can do. Ivy taunts before a mass of mutated vines shoot out at Raven, the half-demon barely dodging the plants, before holding a hand to a large sharp spike. Azarath Metrians in this. She chants before throwing the spike at Ivy, the woman raising a brow before her vines duck down, avoiding the spike easily. Please, I've been avoiding people like the Batman for years, girly. Do you honestly think these kinds of tactics even faze me? Ivy asks mockingly, and Raven frowns while flying away from several vines that are trying to grab her. Damn it, I've never had to fight a plant before. Think, Raven, how do you deal with this? Raven wondered before forming a shield around herself as several vines wrapped around her. Teleporting away, Raven breathed a sigh of relief. Teleportation, annoying but useful for keeping this at least a little more interesting. Ivy muses before shooting several more of the mutated vines at her, Raven groaning before spotting Jinx running along one and towards her. Hold up, Red. She's mine. Jinx shouts before roaring out as she jumps into a spinning roundhouse kick to Raven's midriff, knocking her back in the wind from her. Above this scene, Blackfire and Batgirl crash through the roof, Blackfire smirking as she tosses Batgirl across the roof. Oh great, she's strong and she can fly. Batgirl mutters while slowly standing up, and then grimaces. Are you related to Starfire? She questions and Blackfire smirks in response. I'm her older sister. Blackfire reports while buffing her nails on her shirt, Batgirl grimacing even more as she realizes Starfire would be tough enough. Add on a few extra years of experience and training, and you had a dangerous opponent. I'm warning you right now, I've dealt with far worse than you. Batgirl warns while taking a stance, and Blackfire raises a brow, clearly not impressed. You use the same style as Robin. She notes and Batgirl bits her tongue. However, a second later, Blackfire lunges at Batgirl with a roundhouse kick, Batgirl quickly dodging to one side, and then lashing out with a punch that Blackfire blocked with one arm. No. You're not as refined as Robin is in martial arts, this won't take long. Blackfire notes before lashing out with a kick to Batgirl's gut, sending her skidding back. What do you know? Batgirl shoots back while looking around for some kind of advantage. But given that Blackfire could fly and they were outside, that was very unlikely. Let's see, I know numerous martial arts styles, all from alien worlds, that I have also fully mastered. Blackfire comments with a smug grin and Batgirl mentally grimaces. Oh shit, I have to get the one villain with as much skill as she has power and brains. Batgirl can't help but think since a normal super-powered villain either had no martial arts skills, use a brawling style, or was just plain stupid. Blackfire on the other hand had skill, brains, brawn, endurance, and speed all at once. This was not going to be easy. Lunging forward, Batgirl decided it would be best not to give Blackfire a chance to use her powers. Throwing an explosive batarang at the black-haired girl, she then watched as Blackfire caught it in midair before throwing it back at her. Cursing and rolling to the side, Batgirl evaded the weapon, and then flipped back as Blackfire came down on her, slamming her fists into the ground. Flipping into a kick to Blackfire's chest, Batgirl manages to push the alien girl back, only for her to right herself in midair, and then place her feet against a structure on the roof. Grinning darkly, Blackfire then launches herself forward, swinging a fist at Batgirl. Cursing inwardly, Batgirl flips over Blackfire, and then twists into a kick to her side, knocking her over to the side. Breathing a sigh of relief, Batgirl is shocked when Blackfire merely laughs, and then sits up. Ah, it feels so good to be able to fight again. Blackfire says with her arms raised up, Batgirl quickly shaking her head and lunging at the alien warrior once more, Blackfire grinning darkly as she does. Elsewhere, Robin is now using a knife from his utility belt to try and cut the vine holding him. However, before he can, the vines wrap around his wrists, and then hold them apart from his legs. Nah. Can't have you getting loose, dear. It's been far too long since either I or Harley have gotten to see our favorite little sidekick. Ivy taunts with a very amused smirk and tone, and then watches as Robin snarls in response. I'm not a sidekick. He roars out angrily, and Ivy merely gives him an amused look before turning her head to find Dwayla flipping over Beast Boy, the Green Titan having changed from a tiger into a raptor at some point. Landing behind the large lizard, Dwayla giggles before playfully giving it a raspberry, an annoyed Beast Boy quickly lunging at her. Grinning, Dwayla slides under the raptor, and between its legs, Beast Boy following her with his head only to run into a metal post. Got to watch where you're going, Green Bean. Dwayla comments humorously and laughs to herself as the raptor then rolls onto his feet, its bared fangs showing its obvious anger. Merely reaching back and into her backpack, she then pulls out a pop gun and holds it towards the boy. Blinking, the raptor seems to snort, before Beast Boy suddenly changes back to normal at seeing the weapon, and actually laughs at the clown girl. Dude, what do you expect to do with that lame thing? He questions with a laugh, and Dwayla grins, before firing the weapon, long confetti strings shooting out of it, and wrapping around him. Falling to the ground with a grunt, Beast Boy tries to change shapes, however the odd adhesive tape continues to hold, while stretching to hold him no matter what he does, much like X-Goop once did. That, Dwayla offers simply before whistling and walking away from the Green Titan. Looking up, she then watches as Donnie flies around above and around them, Starfire hot on her tail. Please, young girl, you should not be partaking in this stealing of. Starfire starts to scold, only for Donnie to vanish, causing the Tamaranian to look around and worry. First of all, my name is Ray. Donnie's voice comes as the girl appears above Starfire, bringing both her fists down, and causing her to fall downwards. Secondly, I'm 14, I'm just short for my age, alright. Donnie shouts at Starfire before quickly shooting down after her and grabbing her by her hair, causing the alien princess to grimace in pain. Lastly, I don't want to be a hero, I like being a thief. Donnie then adds angrily before spinning her body and tossing Starfire away, watching as the alien rights herself in midair, eyes glowing brightly. Then forgive me, but I must stop you. Starfire states and fires a beam of energy from her eyes, Donnie smirking beneath her mask, while creating a shield, the shield causing Starfire's attack to bounce right back at her, shocking the Tamaranian greatly, when it slams her into the wall behind her. Yeah well, sorry cutie, but I've got better things to do than play with you all night. Donnie then comments while forming a ball of energy into her hands, and then flies towards Starfire. The alien princess shakes her head at this, then flies above the attack when it slams into the ground. Flying downwards at this, Donnie curses before turning intangible, Starfire flying through her and to the ground below. How did you? Starfire started to ask, only for Donnie to zip down and slam a fist into the princess's face, sending her flying away. Smirking at Donnie's job against Starfire, Dwayla then turns and watches as Harley flips over to Cyborg, the titanium teen, getting up and firing his sonic cannon towards her while holding his head. Laughing loudly, Harley practically dances around the sonic blasts before flipping forward, around the attacks, and kicks Cyborg in the face, sending him back from her surprising strength, and laying him out on his back. Landing on her feet, the woman then walks over to Cyborg, and shakes her head as she looks down at him. Man, someone has really been getting a little too much iron in his diet. Harley notes humorously, while tapping her foot into Cyborg's armored body. Growling, Cyborg groggily sits up, rubbing his head and looking at her with a frown. Holding up his cannon and firing at the clown girl, he gapes when she suddenly leans back to dodge and makes an upside-down U-hack. This is why we need to leave town more often. These kids don't know nothing about catching real criminals. Harley muses before flipping back and then pulling a jack in the box from her back before looking at Cyborg with a grin. Catch. Harley calls out and Robin's eyes whiting. Cyborg no. He calls out only too late as his teammate catches the device, a boxing glove suddenly shooting out of it and slamming into the metal teen's chin. This in turn causes the large titan to lose his balance and fall flat on his back with a groan. Boy oh boy, this is so easy it isn't even funny. Harley comments before snorting. Aw who my kiddin', this is hilarious. Harley notes before laughing to herself, and then wiping a tear from her eye as Cyborg slowly gets up, now rubbing his chin, and Harley looks over to Ivy. Sarette, I think he's all nice and tender for you. She comments and Ivy nods before her vines bring her over to the metal teen. Coming to the ground, Ivy then walks over to Cyborg, the teen holding his cannon towards her. Oh, come now, no need for that. Ivy comments before looking to Harley, the clown girl grinning as she then flips behind Cyborg and knees him in the back of the head, grimacing afterwards while rubbing her sore knee as Cyborg groans once more. He really needed more practice if he wanted to take on these kinds of villains. Now then, let Ivy kiss it all better. Ivy coos before suddenly kissing Cyborg, the titanium teen nearly gaping before his eyes glass over when she pulls back. Oh shit. Robin mutters before seeing several vines drag Beast Boy towards Ivy, Harley limping slightly to look at the green jester. Cyborg. Help. Beast Boy shouts at his friend, as he slowly gets up to his feet, the titanium teen merely grabbing hold of the green boy. Good boy. Ivy suddenly says with a smirk, while Harley snickers and Beast Boy gapes towards the two. Dude. What did you do to Cyborg? Beast Boy demands angrily and Harley rolls her eyes. Birdbrain didn't tell you guys nothing about us, huh? She asks and Beast Boy looks over to Robin, said Boy giving a nervous look to the green teen in response. Truth be told, Robin had never really figured Harley and Ivy to be as dangerous. Without Batman around as they were proving themselves to be. After all, he and Batgirl had dealt with them numerous times on their own. But back then they didn't have help. He then notes with a mental grimace, wondering how these six had managed to team up. Now Harley. He is still a teen, so his mind is on pretty much always on other things. A highly amused Ivy offers her clowny friend and Harley snickers, while Robin twitches angrily. Batgirl suddenly drops from the ceiling with a groan, as Blackfire floats down and places a foot on her back. You two have problems with this? Blackfire asks snidely, Harley pouting, while Ivy looks impressed. Surprising, I guess the villains of this town actually are more dangerous than the heroes would suggest. Either that or Batgirl is starting to slow down from her age. Ivy muses, a smirk at the end since she and Harley both had advanced regenerative abilities, thus lengthened lifespans. You will pay for this. Robin says with a snarl while Starfire is then tossed over as well, landing on top of Batgirl and groaning in pain. Man, she's not as tough as she looks. Donnie comments while floating in the air and Blackfire frowns towards her. Not everyone is a ghost that can walk through walls, Ray. With your powers you'd practically be like a goddess of death to our people. Blackfire counters and Donnie shrugs her shoulders, not really all that interested, while Harley kneels down and lifts Starfire's head with a smirk. Wow, Red, 2 more reds. Harley says with surprise, and Robin growls as he's brought over to the other male titans. Say, where's Pinky? Harley then asks while Donnie points with her thumb to the set girl, Harley smirking as she sees Jinx practically dancing around random objects Raven throws at her. Jinx then starts to use her hex bolts, causing random objects to explode or break apart around them, and still trying to get closer to Raven. I believe this has gone on long enough, it's time for our little game to end, I think. Ivy muses while willing her vines to quickly snake out, then wrap around Raven's legs before coiling around her torso, and then finally over her mouth, the gray-skinned girl twitching as they do so. Wow, we actually won, Red. Not only that, we got Birdbrain and Batbabe hostage. Harley then says happily while Jinx walks over to them, an annoyed frown on her face as Raven is held upside down and over Batgirl and Starfire. You won't get away with this, Quinn. Robin growls out, and both Harley and Ivy look to one another before grinning. Actually, Bird Boy, I think we will be getting away with it. She comments as Ivy pulls some lipstick from the vines and leaves that make up her costume. Say Pammy, can I do Birdbrain? Harley asks and Ivy rolls her eyes before tossing her the lipstick, Harley applying it as well. What are you two doing? Donnie asks and Harley grins towards him. Watch and learn, girls. She says happily before reaching forward to grab Robin, kissing him on the lips as Ivy does the same with Beast Boy. Much like with Cyborg, once the women back off, Beast Boy's eyes dull out, and Robin's body seems to relax. What did you do? Blackfire questions, obviously intrigued, and Ivy smirks. It's a plant-based chemical compound. When combined with my natural pheromones in the air, it allows me to completely control any man I or Harley kisses. Ivy offers casually before Blackfire whistles and Donnie gapes. That is one very useful stick of lipstick. Blackfire states and Harley nods her head in agreement. How long does that stuff last? Jinx asks wearily and Harley looks to her current partner in crime. The new batch lasts a day at most. Ivy admits with a shrug and Jinx looks at the two for a moment. Alright, but I don't trust bringing them to our base. Bird Brain might be faking it, or at least, could have built up some kind of immunity knowing Batman is his teacher. Jinx states and Ivy actually frowns in thought, as that was a very good point after all. True, but with Green Bean here it should be twice as effective considering he's at least part animal, and pheromones really mess them up. Harley muses and Ivy nods her head, that being another good point. Cyborg, carry Robin for me. Ivy states and Cyborg drops Beast Boy before grabbing hold of Robin. Yes, mistress. He says as if in a daze and Ivy then turns to the other girls. You girls take your stuff and head on home if you want. Me and Harley are going to go and have some more fun around town with these three, and I have a little experiment I've been dying to try, but haven't had the time. Ivy offers then muses while a plant brings her an odd device. It was a timer with 2 canisters at the sides and 1 in the back, a funnel-like shape at the top, and what looked like glowing green blood in it from Ivy, or at least a very reasonable facsimile. What's that? Donnie asks with a bad feeling and Ivy smirks. Nothing you need to worry about, dearie. It shouldn't affect your base, but I wouldn't be in the city limits if I were you. Ivy states and Jinx slowly nods her head in agreement, a nervous and frightened look on her face. The 4 Tartarus girls, then quickly grabbing their bags before running out of the building. We're telling Temp, right? Jinx asks and Donnie nods her head. Those two are batshit crazy. That device looked like it was filled with Ivy's blood. The ghost girl comments and Blackfire nods her head with a frown. So I'm crazy too. Willow reminds casually and they look at her for a moment. Yeah, but you never actively tried to murder. Harley had a gun to some guy's head. Donnie reminds and Willow nods her head with a strange look on her face. I have fear toxin and Smilex gas with me at all times. She then offers casually once more, as if trying to prove that she was indeed batshit crazy enough to murder people, and Jinx looks at her in shock before shuddering with fear. Oh no, and Halloween is coming soon. Jinx mutters to herself and shivers. The idea of Dwayla turning into the Scarecrow's daughter for Halloween and dousing the entire city, Tartarus HQ, or at least Titan's Tower with fear toxin crossing her mind for a moment. Let's just hurry back home and get Sensei. If those two axe the Titans, or if Ivy is planning what I think she is, then we're going to have the entire Justice League breathing down our neck very soon. Donnie reminds and thus the 4 girls rush towards their base faster than ever. Meanwhile, back in the mall, Ivy and Harley are gathering up their own sacks of loot, while Starfire and Batgirl are both held by more of Ivy's vines, Raven glaring at them as they do. However, Harley then suddenly frowns and takes a thoughtful expression before turning around and looking at Ivy. Say Red, what should we do with these 3? Harley asks while motioning to Raven, Starfire, and Batgirl. You have a Joker bomb on you, right? Ivy asks casually and Harley nods her head and pulls one out of her bag, the bomb having 3 sticks of dynamite taped together with a green-haired clown face on the front with a timer in its mouth. Then let them go out with a bang. My plan doesn't involve their interference. Ivy offers with a wave of her hand, and then has her vines grab their own bags, while she holds the device from before in her arms. Oh yeah. This is gonna be so much fun. Harley says happily, while putting the bomb down, and then setting the timer. Alright, later Ravi, me and Pammy have to go now. After all, we have some real hell to raise in this old town. In fact, you might say it's gonna be a real urban jungle out there. Harley offers with a mock salute before she hops onto a vine with Ivy, a zombie-like Cyborg and Beast Boy following after them. Looking down, or up, Raven can't help but gulp as she sees the timer on the bomb. 2 minutes was all the time they had left. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.